So when we talk about time and we talk about our watches and the 24 hours that we have, we all know what it is. We all know what it represents. And we as humans, we like landmarks in time, because what it allows us to do is take a look at where we're at that moment, to maybe reset, to maybe start something. So you might be saying, well, James, what does this have to do with the 4 C's? Well, it has a lot to do with the 4 C's. There's actually 2 factors within the 4 C's that jump out at me when I'm talking about time as it relates to beginning, midpoint, and end. And that is achievement orientation as it relates to commitment, and learning orientation as it relates to challenge.
Welcome to Charge Forward Coaching, the podcast for committed athletes and individuals who want to achieve more on and off the field. Hosted by James Blasco, certified mental toughness and resilience coach. You'll gain insights and inspiration from elite athletes, coaches, and others who know what it takes to excel. Are you ready to go to the next level? Then tune in, get inspired, and let's charge forward. Now here's your host, James Blasco.
Hello and welcome to the Charge Forward Coaching Podcast. I'm James Blasco. Thanks for joining. So hopefully you watched the previous episode. I'm doing a two-part episode on time. And the first episode was on time as it relates to 24 hours within your day. And we talked a lot about the big changes that happen to you both physically and mentally during the course of a day, depending on, when you sleep and so forth, and the patterns you should develop or be aware of that you could get through your day in a very constructive way, in a way that helps you get a lot faster to your goals than if you didn't pay attention to those things. But today we're going to talk about what's referred to as the beginnings, the midpoint, and the end. And it comes from a great book, The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing by Daniel Pink. So I highly recommend you get that. There'll be another book that I referenced too. It's 10 Times is Easier Than 2 Times by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. But when we talk about beginning, midpoint, and end, it could be our life, could be a project, could be a game, right, that we're in the middle of. But the most important thing about it is that these points in time are extremely relevant to the results we get out of whatever it is we're doing. You might say, okay, Captain Obvious, that would make sense. But let's take a step back and look at kind of what time is again. And in the last episode, I talked about how time is really, the perception of time for all of us is different. So we get these 24 hours, which are kind of man-made, right? Our watches, our clocks, even on our phones, it's all man-made. It's there for us to have basically make civilization, right? So we could have commerce and do the things we need to do. We're all aware of where we should be and when we should be there. But really, time is up to you in terms of, you could slow it down. You can make it go faster. Sounds crazy. Albert Einstein doesn't think it's crazy, right? And a lot of other people don't either. There's so much research out there and studies being done, but this is real time, especially when it comes to long term, can be adjusted for you if you know how to do it. So when we talk about time and we talk about our watches and the 24 hours that we have, we really have what are referred to as landmarks in time. And that's how we kind of know what's going on and how to pace ourselves and things. So, for example, New Year's Day, right? New Year's Day is a landmark in time. We all know what it is. We all know what it represents. And we as humans, we like landmarks in time, because what it allows us to do is take a look at where we're at that moment, to maybe reset, to maybe start something. So landmarks are really important, but you can develop your own landmarks. They can center around your birthday or an anniversary or the start of a season, a first game date or whatever. But you could also create your own landmarks for everything that you're doing building up to a goal that you're trying to achieve. And the cool thing is you could start again, you could get refreshed, all the same things you do with other landmarks that the rest of us use as a whole on planet Earth. So you might be saying, well, James, what does this have to do with the 4 C's? Well, it has a lot to do with the 4 C's. There's actually 2 factors within the 4 C's that jump out at me when I'm talking about time as it relates to beginning, midpoint, and end. And that is achievement orientation as it relates to commitment, and learning orientation as it relates to challenge. So let's talk about the beginning, the middle point, and the end, and what those mean, and how you could take advantage of those and be aware of the impact of each of those segments. So let's talk about beginnings. You know, in the book that I just shared, 10 times easier than 2 times, Dr. Benjamin Hardy talks about your future self. And your future self is really important because that's who you want to be down the road, whatever it is that you're describing to yourself, what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish for yourself. That's your future self. And that future self really plays a big part in your present self, because your present self has to do the things to become the future self, right? And then your present self has control over your past self. You might say, well, how's that possible? The past has already taken place. It has, but the present self has the ability to determine the meaning of what took place in the past. And if you do that properly, your present self will be in a better position to work towards being your future self, but your future self is already in the present. Gets kind of weird in there. But the bottom line is you need to be aware of where you want to go. And the reason for that is when you start something at the beginning, sometimes you don't have all of the influence over the beginning of something that you'd like to have, but a lot of times you do. So you need to make the very best effort to start whatever it is in the best way you possibly can. And one of the reasons why is, believe it or not, how you start something has a big impact on how it ends. Right? And the timing of that is really important. And again, we can't control the timing necessarily of all these beginnings that we have in our life. But regardless of what it is, you have to be aware that that moment when you start is a bigger deal than you think. So you want to be in the best position to start. It doesn't mean like if you're just starting to work out, you have to go do this, 10-mile run or something like that. But maybe you educate yourself on running. Right? Maybe you make sure you run with a partner, somebody who knows more than you do, and make sure that first run, you're learning the basics of how to run properly, right? Or whatever it is you're going to do. So beginnings are like really, really crucial, and they influence a lot of the endings that we have in our lives. The next part, the midpoint, is kind of like that trough. If you watch the last episode in our 24 hours, there's always that mid to late afternoon where we're just not thinking the same way. We don't feel the same way. Well, midpoints in anything that we're doing are kind of similar. When we get to midpoints of working towards a goal or some project we're doing or whatever it is, we tend to kind of slow down. We get a little foggy. We're not as focused. Sometimes we cut corners. We do all these things, and they're not always very constructive. They're certainly not going to help us get to our goal or get there faster as we want to. So you got to be aware of that slump that happens, and you got to prepare for it because it's going to happen. The majority of the time it's going to happen. However, midpoints can also be this big boost. So I'll give you an example. They did a study, NCAA basketball games, thousands of them. Right? They wanted to see, different things when it came to scoring and halftime. And one of the things they found, I won't get into all the details, read the book. It's really good. He goes into the study, he goes into a particular NCAA tournament game. But the bottom line is one team was behind by 1 point at halftime in a national championship game. And they ended up winning. Now, you say, well, that's no big deal. That happens a lot. And you're right. It happens a lot. In fact, what they found was most teams who are down by a small margin at halftime, the majority of those teams end up winning the game. Why is that? Well, they're midpoint. So you do get a slump. Maybe some things weren't going the way they wanted to. They weren't as focused, whatever it might be. They come in the locker room. What does the coach do? If he's a good coach, he starts executing the plan for the second half. And he reminds them, okay, now we only have this much time left, and we have to get a couple more points in them for sure, or we're going to lose the game. So all of a sudden they have energy, they have more focus, they have a mission, they have a goal, and they know they have a certain period of time to accomplish all of it, or it's done. So midpoints could actually be a big boost. It happens a lot in corporations where a group of folks are given a project, and they don't do a whole lot in the beginning, maybe a little bit. They get midway. It's a big deal, a lot of money on the line. And all of a sudden somebody in the group goes, yo, guys, we only have a month to finish this. We have to get going. All of a sudden, somebody has another idea. All of a sudden, somebody starts putting a plan together. And all of a sudden, they have a reason. They don't want to get fired, right? They want to make sure the company's profitable or whatever. They accomplish this goal. They have a reason to get that done. The midpoint is like fuel injection. So when you're working on a goal or a project or whatever it is you're doing, if you have a calendar, you might want to circle what you think is going to be the midpoint. And you might want to develop a plan for the slumps going to happen, most likely. But then what you can do once you get the information where you are at midpoint to get to where you need to be at the end. Make sense? Okay. So then we get to the end, and there's a quote. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's by Orson Welles, and it goes, if you want a happy ending, that depends, of course, on where you stop your story. Right? That's pretty cool, because we all want happy endings. We all want things to go our way, but we talk about grit, perseverance, right? If you end your story in the middle, in the slump, or when things get difficult or challenging, right, then you're never going to have that happy ending. You get to create the ending of your story. And so endings are really important, kind of obvious again, because they're the end of whatever it is that we were working towards. But endings are also important because they do four things. Number one, they could energize us. They can provide a lot of focus, determination, things that we need to accomplish a goal. So I'll give you another stat from the NFL. They did this a few seasons back. I think it was 2016, 2017. Again, from the book I just shared with you. And they were looking at when teams score the most points. And they went through the first quarter and the second quarter, and they found at halftime, right towards the end of half, a lot of points were scored, right? Then they got into the third quarter, even more points were scored. But then guess what? The last minute or two of a game, that's when the most points in the entire NFL are scored. People get energized. You got to win the game. You only have 2 minutes left. Maybe you're out of timeouts, right? You got to go 50, 60, 70 yards. You got to do it quickly, right? So focus is there. Maybe you got to make up 10 points or 7 points, whatever, but you get energized from that. The other thing is we encode from the ending of whatever it is that we're doing. We give it kind of meaning. And you got to be careful with this one, because lots of times the meaning that we give the ending of anything is based on like the one moment or the biggest moment of that whole event. So think about it. Maybe you go on vacation, you had a great vacation, and then at the end, maybe you got sick, right? So you had 6 days of awesome times with your family and friends and 1 day of being sick. But in your mind, you think, oh, that's the vacation I got sick, right? And we do that with our lives too. We judge people sometimes. We look at somebody who did maybe all these good things throughout their life, and at the end, they did something stupid, and that's how they're judged and looked upon. We forget about the other 80% of their life where they did good. And so you got to be careful with encoding. You got to look at the big picture of what you've done, what you've accomplished, and bring meaning to that in a constructive way. We also, at the end, we tend to edit. We tend to edit things that are happening. So we can, especially I'll give you an example with older folks, as they go through life, they start editing out people in their social circle. Some of those people, unfortunately, might pass away, but what they start doing is bringing in and hanging around and being around the people that are most important to them, the things that are most important to them, because time is of the essence. And so you're not going to be hanging out with a lot of people that might not mean as much to you, because you want quality time with the people that you love or care about or mean a lot to you. And then lastly, endings will elevate you. We all love a happy ending. You don't like to watch a movie. It happens once in a blue moon. You watch it, and at the end, it just doesn't make sense. It's your favorite character dies or something like that. That's not very uplifting. We like things that uplift us. And there was a study that was done on chocolate. They gave a couple groups chocolate. One, as they kept giving them chocolate, they just let them eat the chocolate. And they asked them, what did you think of the chocolate? And they're like, yeah, they were all good. They were awesome, right? And another group, they gave chocolate But they told them when they got to like their last one, they said, that's your last chocolate. Guess which one they picked as their favorite chocolate? The last one, right? So we want things to end on a positive note. And you could do that, right? You could do that. But all the things we've just talked about are important to lead up to that. And then you could give yourself a happy ending, the ending that you want. So I hope you've gotten some good information out of this. Time is something we all have, but it's not the same for all of us. And we have to know how to utilize it. And from the last 2 episodes, one of the key things I hope you take away is that whatever you're doing, as much as possible, as often as possible, be focused, be absorbed. Don't try to do 100 things. Do 1, 2, 3 things that are important to you, that are important to getting to your goal, and focus on them. Be aware of your day, the time of day. Be aware of the bigger picture. Are you in the midpoint? Did you just start? How are you going to start? All those things matter, but now you know, and you can plan for those, and you can move in the direction of all your goals. So don't forget to like and share and subscribe and all that good stuff, but most of all, keep charging forward.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Charge Forward Coaching. Remember, the journey to greatness is built on mental toughness and consistent effort. So head on over to chargeforwardcoaching.com and book a free discovery call to take the next step in your journey. Until next time, stay focused, stay determined, and keep charging forward.